So I think that sums up what we mean by the central point of authority, what it is to be nothing actually means to be something, not everything. And also, the way it's described in decolonial sort of theory is the epistemological zero point. And I just wanted to give you a quick little quote here. Other people with their own existence and knowledges do not have the same problem you have, and therefore could care less about your knowledge until the moment you impose it upon them and assume that you know them because you've described them in your system of knowledge and your epistemic architecture. And I think that also, because then there's a sense of, oh, but we have to be aware that we are this or we are that. It's just not just about an awareness. It needs to go beyond an awareness of even the sort of argument of cultural awareness / cultural sensitivity. Like, those things can stay at a very, very superficial level, and in naming it, you almost sort of depoliticize it at the same time, which is what I talk about when it comes to the field of representation, and the conversation happening already in set discursive, predetermined frames. So, and that brings us back to this, I guess. I wanted to give you just this other quick example. This is the Roads Must Fall campaign that happened in South Africa this year. This is in Cape Town, and there's this massive statue of Cecil Rhodes, and then there was a big sort of decolonial campaign that started off with a student throwing feces at Cecil Rhodes, and then that went on to this online sort of campaign. And this particular performer, Sethemel, she would perform at the statue almost every week in various different sort of interventions as a performance artist, and this is her performing when the statue is finally being taken, well, put away for now, I guess. So just to sum up, decolonial interventions are not about saying, let's go back to the pre-colonialism times because we're here, and this is happening as an ongoing thing. So what instead it argues is an attempt to sort of think reflexively about the work that you do, reconceptualize the historical relations that have been created, and that means thinking it in terms of artistically, culturally, politically, etc., economically, etc., etc. So it's an active sort of de-imperializing work of redefining these relationships and ways of knowing and thinking, and also including other ways of being in that process. So in highlighting the contradictions through juxtaposition, you go, what are the possibilities of other ways of being outside of this particular frame? A world in which many worlds coexist, which is a quote from the Zapatista indigenous movement in Mexico. So I hope essentially that the Unwelcome Mats, if anything, is questioning the natural inherent idea of ontology of being. I am a certain way because historically, politically, epistemologically, it has been structured and enforced that way. Then, I don't know, like, question time? I've talked quite a bit, and I know it was a bit abstract, but I'm also like a research student, so I think it's really important to bring some of these theories into interventions like this. Questions? Discussions? Dance? Yes.
Can you go back to those kind of rules that you had for looking and seeing?
This one?
Yeah, I really like that. I think that yes, that's an amazing list, and I think that's an amazing list for anyone making work in public space as well.
Yeah.
Because not only does it, kind of get to the heart of what you're talking about, it gets to the heart of sight and the way people are moving and existing, and that's just a fantastic way to make critical comments on the world. It's a great list. And if kind of your art, and I'm kind of taking this from an art if your art isn't doing any of this, I would quite comfortably say it's not art. So this is a fantastic kind of set of provocations to just ask questions, to kind of provoke and to help you interrogate the world. Yeah, and then I think it's really interesting to see the results in the world, not in a kind of hermetically sealed, supposedly blank white gallery space, you know?
But also the nuances of when we can use that space as also a way of being like disobedient in that sense. And that's what we mean in relation to your positionality in the world. So maybe you've been excluded from these places, so you know, presenting in these places and sort of with this in mind still is part of that side of resistance.
Yeah.
But yeah, completely understand.
Yeah, it's a fantastic layer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like, for me what really took me about that was who's benefiting and taking advantage, because you know, when you do this kind of work, like you said, it's very hard to measure, or I mean, and then you have the academic side, which they just want to measure and have evidence, and everything is so evidence-based and nano, you know, it's like it can't exist if it's not science or evidence anyway. But who is taking advantage of this knowledge and this thinking? You know, how do we know? Is it always preaching to the converted? That's the kind of, I'm not asking a question, I'm just kind of throwing up a paradox, or just an unknown thing, really.
Yeah. And how even fact and science is considered that knowledge-making tool is also very
It is, because all over, I mean, I think they're just shutting down the School of Philosophy in Paris, and, you know, the big places of thinking are all being shut. So art is the last space, almost.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like you said, art itself, if you're not doing all that, it's not art.
Yeah.
Because it questions everything and disrupts everything anyway. I would just like to know what you think about, from your work maybe, or your project, who do you think's benefiting and taking advantage of the things that you're throwing? I mean, we are.
I would like to preface my sort of response to that is in understanding your positionality, you kind of, for want of a better way of describing it at this point, is also what are the political decisions you make. And how is that compromising, and how is that a process of that resistance. So and you saw like there was a benefit in me saying, well, actually this is part of the Fringe Festival, guys. I'm just, you know, like when I was just having in that particular discourse with the security guard, if I had just said, my name's Tanya, you know, there's a completely different way to react to that. So I would probably be the first person to say there is a way of constructing that that response, but in a conscious way. So there are certain, Fringe is benefiting from artists as well, but also it's a commission piece, so there's also different resources associated to it. Also, what's my position in society, this sort of space, like all these sort of decisions we can go into saying who is benefiting and who isn't, but I think the important thing is how all these decisions play into that particular project piece or way of being in the world.
So you talked about modernity, and so your kind of activist side is maybe working along just pockets of resistance rather than looking at one big thing altogether. It's looking at power in different manifestations.
And I most of the work I do and also through sort of personal history is around looking at refugee asylum seeker communities here, mainly in Melbourne, but also how these spaces are sort of consistent around the world. So that's what the PhD research is on. That's also what my previous scripts have been on, performances. So this is the first way I've sort of forayed into the visual arts world. I'm researcher and theatre maker, so but then there's a performality of this.
Well, yes, because people are standing on it as well.
Exactly.
They're standing on it, and it's almost like, you're a doormat, or there's all kinds of metaphors that spin off the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just the different ways to access that issue, the different points that you can make, the different manifestations to question that particular sort of rhetoric. Yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to
2 points. One about the picture of you putting that in front of Parliament House, and the idea that Parliament House is an institution and a place where, in fact, the majority of the population is not welcome.
Yeah.
Regardless of what background you are, you're excluded.
For sure.
The only way you can participate in that space really is everyone when you go to vote. But when it comes to actually physically being in that space, security and all that sort of thing.
Take your hijab off.
Yeah. Because when I was with the Greens, I noticed that even with a lot of the volunteers for the Greens who are actively, in the democratic process, have never been in the Parliament House. Most Australians have no idea about how a democratic process works, let alone people who are refugees and asylum seekers. So it's kind of interesting about who has agency from where I'm getting at, and whether the doormat in itself is trying to provoke a sense of wearing my agency when I'm actually stepping onto that doormat and into another space, or when I'm moving from that space, say the Immigration Museum or the Department of Immigration and Border Protection. So I'm moving out of that space onto that doormat and then into the social world. So how did you contribute to the act of agency within the general population when it comes to engaging with the mat itself?
How did I?
Have you considered people's agency when it comes to stepping onto the mat and into certain public and private spaces?
I think I can push that a bit more because, like I said, when it was in front of the department, did I skip a page? Yeah, when it was in front of the department, like a lot of people just sort of walked in, walked out, sort of assumed, which is why I was like, does it need to be highlighted more? But I guess in saying that there is, I think the MAC does sort of question that way of being that has been constructed through a set of instructions, which is the theme for this set of instructions and therefore the power dynamics involved. Like the best example I can think of is when you're at a theatre, for example, the lights go down, you stop talking, you start clapping, and there's a way of being in that space that is socially constructed, considered quite normal, but you take theatre elsewhere and people are like, interacting, stopping, like there's different ways of being in this space that are constructed through instructions or law or So maybe I can push the agency, but I think even before pushing the agency, it's about that moment where you go, that moment where you realize your own habit of being. I think those are the beautiful moments, because then you can sort of go, my positionality in society is this, or this is I'm doing this, and then you figure out what that agency means to you. Yeah.
I'd just like to say that I think it works really well for the people that are articulate about these issues. Just that moment you're talking about where you pause and go, hold a second, what's going on with this map? And everyone that notices suddenly has that, but I usually just, and that can promote a discussion on any level with so many people that these sort of discussions don't usually reach. I just think it works so well.
Yeah, and that's when this made it to the Junkie blog, and never read the comments. You're kind of tempted and you're like, oh no. There was a comment that was like, someone give this artist a grant, and I was like, yes. But then there were a few other problematic comments, and one of them was like, does the artist realize that I think he or she was saying the Victoria Parliament has no say as to who does or doesn't get citizenship in this country. And I was like, yeah, but that's not the point. It's like, how was that authority given through colonialism and that for me was a representation of that. So it's like, that's what I mean about the conversation just happening here. Let's it's bigger than that. It's historically bigger than that. And before I get to your question, I forgot to mention as well, like this idea of managing these spaces even is inherent in the change of portfolio names for, like, you know, it's the Citizenship and Border Protection portfolio now. Since 2013 though, it was Immigration and Citizenship, and then before that was Immigration and Multicultural Affairs. So we're going from like Immigration, Multicultural Affairs, and then to like Citizenship and Immigration, and then it's like Citizenship but Border Control. Like already we're seeing that clearly.
Unwelcome.
Yeah, like just, you know, in the space of what, less than 10 years. Yeah.
What sparked this idea from, like, how, like, given your background, what moment happened wherein you said like, oh, I saw a mat and then I just want to have this like unwelcome text over it?
I don't know. That was a question the videographers asked me, but I believe that like these moments happen throughout your life. Does that make sense? Everything at one point kind of goes and then it clicks. So I can't really describe that moment where I thought I had been sitting on this idea for about a year, and like it's also that sort of, even that a bit of imposter sort of thinking, you know, when you're like, oh, is that a good idea? And you know, I was sitting on it for a very long time, and I think I pitched it to my sister and maybe spoke about it in very sort of limited circles, and it's also hard to know how people would react to it. Like initially I was like, maybe it needs to be many different phrases, like not like speak English or not Australian, or like there's many sort of ideas, but then the simplicity of just the pure juxtaposition I think was enough. And initially the idea was actually to have like 100 printed and like put them at Federation Square and then take it to Canberra, and like there was like it had many sort of different manifestations in the project. But yeah, it's hard to say that particular moment, but I think what sort of geared me up to sort of approach the Fringe and apply for this is these increasing welcome narratives that I felt were really not very critical. Yeah.
Because a lot of the asylum seeker resource centre was selling those mats.
They were selling it. Yeah, I showed a picture of the mat.
Online.
Yeah.
And the question was about agency, when you're buying something like that. I'm a doormat with refugees welcome, and then you're buying it, and then you're putting it in front of your own house, and visitors come to your house and they say, oh, and they're scraping their foot on refugees welcome. It's just like, where did one agency have to something where it becomes consumable?
Yeah, and actually, like the third drawdown, they sent me an email and they were like, a couple of people have asked to buy the mats. I was like, wow. And this was, I don't know, like initially the Fringe was like, maybe people might want to buy it. I was like, yeah. And then when I actually got that email, I was like, oh, they have a list of people that actually want to buy the mats. Like, do they understand the politics of this piece, or is it just So, and going on from what you were saying, I don't know if you guys saw it. Like, oh, maybe it's like 8 years ago now. Time flies, but John Safran did a really interesting art intervention where, you know how people put in front of their houses sort of acknowledgement or welcome or something like that? And then he actually, the art intervention piece was like getting a group together and sort of being like, so can we set up house here? Yeah, so we'll just like sit and, you know, you mind if I put up a tent? And they were just, no. It's playing with those kind of ideas of the space and stuff. And what you actually mean by saying something like that, and how socially acceptable and retro and cool it is to say that. Yeah. But in so doing, reinforcing the same. Yeah. So
for me, there was a completely different feeling of rubbing my feet, like you were saying, you're rubbing your feet on it. And if there was it's like the like, or when you like a video on YouTube, but on Facebook, but it's a horrific thing that you've seen, but you have to press like because do you know that kind of thing? Yeah. Like I'd feel very different rubbing my feet on that, or the other, because refugees welcome, and then you're thinking, well, I'm rubbing my feet on the thing that I want. You know, it's disturbing. It's very good. It's very, very good. Well, I think I like it so much.
There was 1%, and I'll go to Julie.
Oh, as I've been saying to you all along, I just think you've got to. You said maybe I should have taken it to Parliament House. this project is not over.
Yeah, it's only just begun.
Are you guys with me?
This is the first, couple of months, and it'll grow and it'll evolve, and change, and lessons hopefully will be learned, and kind of clarify your approach and find these amazing ways to kind of hit people's agency and really stop them. And from watching the blog, the comments on that, there's some people who are like, give this girl a grant. Some people who are like, just when you thought the definition of art couldn't get any more loose. Really kind of like smart and funny, to the downright like, oh wow, there's a lot of work still to be done. Really, obviously a lot of work to be done, but it's provoked that. And I think that's really quite amazing how, an object that's kind of manufactured rather than made as a craft object is really doing the work very well. That's a good go. I want to see more.
I didn't have so much a question time, but more a response. And I think in terms of the Unwelcome Mat, it sort of triggered thinking in mine in terms of, well, at what point does Parliament House do you get to lay the welcome mat and replace it with the unwelcome mat? And I think also, we talked about it just a moment ago, the responsibility of welcome and the responsibilities of unwelcome. From a cultural context, and I'm of Māori heritage, we have our word manaakitanga. Manaakitanga means caring. In a biggest, broadest sense. We have the biggest welcome mat out on our front doorsteps, and it's not just about that surface hospitality. It goes much, much deeper than that. So in my little head, I'm thinking, I see Tanya running around putting these mats out and at immigration. Wouldn't it be nice to think at some point in time, she's actually now saying, well, these people have kind of risen to the challenge, and I feel compelled now to give them the welcome mat because they're actually living and breathing. These are just little things running around in my head that have kind of responded to what you've been speaking about tonight. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Very good.
Hi. So I was also being a nerdy theorist this morning and reading about social exclusion and inclusion, and I think it's in terms of policy making in the UK and Australia, and I guess the discourse in the UK was more around exclusion, so looking at structural barriers for a lot of disadvantaged groups, whereas in Australia it's been around inclusion, which sort of someone puts it onto the individual and brushes over the kind of systemic issues. I wonder if you've thought about it, your project more broadly, beyond just a kind of decolonising discourse around other types of inclusion and exclusion?
No, not yet. Well, most of my research theoretical background is around like pedagogy, popular education, sort of applied theatre, theatre of the oppressed. Some people will know about that here, and those all talk about like the social political implications of. This is the first time that I'm taking specifically and clearly a decolonial approach. So I think it fits quite well with all these other sort of existing theories that developed through Latin America, who also went through colonialism, etc., etc. So if anything, I think coming to this point of decolonial framework is from various other sort of theoretical frameworks that have got me to this point here, to have this particular framing for this particular discussion here. Just to answer your question, yeah. Was that clear? Okay. Thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate your presence and your sort of your contributions here today and your thoughts. And yeah, thanks for the Fringe and Immigration Museum. Thanks, Zoe, for the support. Thanks. Uncommon Places interventions to the theme instructions, there's a little pamphlet here. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you.